agenda, we're going to be replacing the outer tie rods on our 2008 Nissan Rogue. This should work on every single model till current date. Ours is an all-wheel drive, but it shouldn't matter. The part numbers might change, but the process is still the same. So what I have here is our Moog problem solver parts. Comes with our new tie rod here, cotter pin, as well as a nut. I'm probably not going to be using this. I don't want to remove the one that's on the car now. And there's also a castellated nut on the actual ball joint. Unfortunately, these are not pre-tapped or drilled for Zerk fittings, so we're just going to leave them as is. I know a lot of people do drill them out. I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to risk getting any metal contaminants into the ball joint and prematurely wearing it out. But this is your outer tie rod. See this flat spot here? It's on either side. That's so you can stick a wrench on it and to prevent it from twisting, or to twist it if you need to apply any torque on it. So let's go ahead and remove the wheel and get busy. Alright guys, I got the vehicle safely jacked up on jack stands. I've removed the wheel. We have our workspace right here. We have 14mm nut up here we got to remove. We have a 3/7/8, I'm sorry, nut back here that we got to remove, or at least loosen. And then this is the part that we're going to be removing from the knuckle. Now, there could be a little issue here with this nut severely seized on to the actual ball joint stud. So if you watch some of my other videos, I have torching techniques on how to loosen this up nicely with some heat. I have PB Blaster soaking on it right now because I do see that it's pretty rusted. So as everything else in this car, I'm expecting it to give me an issue. So I'm going to try to bang it out real quick with a 14mm socket to see if it at least will loosen it. If not, I'm going to apply the heat technique. Wow, I thought that was not going to be moving. Okay, so we got it moving somewhat. I'm going to leave it right there as is. And the next step, well, what should have been the first step, is we're going to measure this distance here, so this way we don't have to get an immediate wheel alignment. It's still advised that you do get one, but we can at least forego it for the time being. There's a couple techniques you can do. You can measure from the back of the bolt here to the center of where this ball joint goes through. You can use a tape. We'll just clean this off. So this way, if I mark it, it's going to be nice and dry. So you can see how nice and clean it is all of a sudden. So what we can do is we can measure from either the back of the nut or the beginning of the tie rod to the center, say right here. See how I have this, like, almost looks like a little speed bump or something. So I'm going to measure that up from the back of the nut and the beginning of the tie rod. And I'm going to measure that as 6 3/4. Write that down. So what I did there is I just wrote some notes down for myself. I wrote down where I took the measurement from, the back of the nut to the top of the tie rod, right to that little ridge right here. Another technique you can do is you can apply some paint here like you see I've done, and I used yellow, and this way when you back the nut you'll see if there's any gap where the paint is missing. You know, obviously the setting is off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and loosen up this nut. See how my whole tie rod's turning? So what you can do is secure the tie rod and turn just a nut by. See how this? I have a flat spot right here. All tie rods should have a flat spot somewhere on them, and that prevents them from turning while you loosen up the nut. And it can be a little balancing act. So unfortunately this nut's pretty stuck on there, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab the torch. Just keep everything nice and safe. I don't want to keep banging on and break the inner tie rod. Usually a little bit of heat works nicely. Let's try it now that it's nice and warm. There she goes. So we just want to loosen it up just a little bit, just a hair. So a little bit of the propane torch gave me just enough heat to spin this nut here. I want to loosen it just a little bit, just so it takes some tension off of this outer tie rod. So the next thing is we're going to go ahead and focus on the ball joint area here. Now if you notice, there's a star shape in there, and that's just in case if the ball joint starts to spin inside its socket, which means the nut will spin with it. This allows you to take a 14mm wrench, put it on the nut, a star bit to hold the ball joint, and then you can begin to loosen just the nut versus the whole ball joint spinning. But if you have an impact wrench and you just use it in bursts, hopefully that should prevent it from just spinning around versus actually coming off. Wow, you can see how smoky that got. Everything's so rusted up on this car for 100,000 miles. It's pretty crazy. What you can do next is spray a little bit of anti-seize in there, or I'm sorry, penetrating oil. Give that a split second, and then hit the knuckle. Try not to concentrate on that, just in case it's so severely seized that you have massive problems. At least you'll be able to put it all back together. So hit just the knuckle and not the actual ball joint. And it will loosen up on itself, just like that. We're going to try to keep everything on this end as stationary as possible, including this nut. We don't want to loosen it any further. We're going to remove just the arm here. Let's take a look at this ball joint here. You can see, you can even hear it. I was getting a lot of squeaking noises, and you can tell there's so much play between the boot and the actual stud that the grease leaked out. There was nothing in here, and it probably leaked out from all those cracks, the stress cracks. And I was getting a lot of grinding noises. Like if you'd sit in line, let's say like a drive-through, and you turn the wheels to go around real slow, you get this like squeaking noise, almost like an old gate opening up or something. But you can tell the boot is pretty much shot. Look at all that the stress fractures along that boot. You see that? Through time, this would have just torn completely. Grit would have gotten in here if it didn't already. So before we go any further, I'm just going to give this spot right here a good cleaning with some brake cleaner. I don't want any of the oils or grease or dirt getting on the new boot and possibly deteriorating it. You guys notice something? There's some grease on here, and that comes from the factory. They designed it that way, so this way if you ever have to remove these, they're not totally seized up on you, because, you know, think about it, there's a lot of dirt and grit around here, and these things do go pretty commonly. I mean, I've heard them go from 30 to 60,000 miles. I got 100,000 out of this car, even though I did drive for the last 20,000 miles on it. Pretty ugly looking. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually slip some in here, so it'll work its way down like that. That's just some anti-seize. I use Permatex anti-seize. Probably won't coat this area with anything. I don't want anything contaminating the boot. God forbid it just doesn't mix well with whatever the boot is made from. It will pretty much deteriorate that boot within a year or so, or swell it, which makes it very, very brittle. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take a new tie rod here, get Go ahead and feed it on. And we don't want to go past this bolt, which means we don't want to move anything. So we definitely want to go nice and easy with it. And once we get really close to that nut, we want to hold on to the nut. Okay, you see that's probably too much already. We're going to back off of it. Because remember, we had to loosen this a little bit, so we need some space to tighten it back up. So now we're just going to slowly push this back into this hole here. And sometimes these new ball joints are a little stubborn and stiff. So just take an open and a wrench, pop it over that, and manipulate the ball joint stud so it will go in the way you need it to go. So that, I believe, is just enough to turn this nut back against our tie rod here. So as I stated in the beginning, our new tie rod end comes with a new castle nut. So you want to tie that down or tighten it down. We're going to keep this hand tight for right now. We're going to go ahead and tighten down this nut. You want to measure from the back of this nut here to the top of the tie rod to that little speed hump here that I was talking about. Boom. Wow. Right on center too. Perfect for me. You stick your cotter pin right through that and spread each tab out. You'll notice one's longer than the other. Just wrap it around the castle nut. Like that. Alright guys, I just want to reiterate everything that we've done. We took our measurements, we did our lines and our markings. Obviously, this being a new ball joint, the marking is going to be a little bit off. You notice this is like a 1/16 of a turn off. You know, a couple things are going to be a little bit different. That ball joint was a little bit more flexible, so the way you park the car and lifted up the wheel and the way it, hung off on inside the ball joint is going to be totally different than the way this nice new stiff ball joint reacts. So unfortunately, you're probably going to need a wheel alignment. If you notice it tugging to one side, I would just go and get it anyway. It's like $150. You'll start off fresh. You know everything's set right. You're going to have perfectly even tire wear on either side. And it's just a good thing to do after replacing any kind of steering components. So we put on our new tie rod, put on the new cotter pin on the castle nut, made sure everything's nice and tight. We went back and did everything. Obviously, things are done off camera that, we just double check things off camera before we film it and sometimes after we film it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Next side, the opposite side, the passenger side. The passenger side is going to be the same thing, just pretty much in reverse order. So, thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to visit my store. I'm stricken06.com. On there is my Amazon store. You'll find all the tools that I work with. So if you like any of it, just go ahead and buy it. Yeah, that's it. Thanks guys. Take care.